Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us here for our Creative Industry Summit Series webinar. My name is Chris Cathers. I'm the Executive Director of the Kentucky Arts Council, and on behalf of the staff and board of the Arts Council, we want to welcome you to today's topics. Today, we're talking about the Kentucky Folklife Magazine stories of community scholars. Before we get started, I'd like to provide a land acknowledgement. A land acknowledgement is a formal statement that recognizes the unique and enduring relationship that exists between Indigenous peoples and their traditional territories. Today, we stand on grounds occupied by ancient peoples whose history has been lost, but whose legacy remains. The evidence of these ancient people can be seen all over Kentucky through the mounds and artifacts left behind. Today, over 170 American Indian tribes are represented by their members living and working in the Commonwealth. Let us honor those who were here and those who are here now and build on the legacy of stewardship of the land they left for us into the seventh generation. With today's webinar series, we will be discussing stories from the newest issue of the Kentucky Folklife Digital Magazine. This is a publication of the Kentucky Folklife Program. This Creative Industry Summit Series webinar features Yolantha Harrison Pace of Boyle County and Brenda Bear of Lewis County, both graduates of the Community Scholars Training Program, coordinated by the Kentucky Folklife Program with support from the Kentucky Arts Council. Delainey Bowers, folklorist and editor-in-chief of Kentucky Folklife Digital Magazine, will facilitate this narrative stage in which the scholars will share stories about their research and artworks that explore community, identity, cultural expression, and a sense of belonging. Now I'd like to welcome a friend to the Kentucky Arts Council and director of the Kentucky Folklife Program at Western Kentucky University, Mr. Brent Bjorkman. Brent.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you for that introduction and that land acknowledgement. It's a pleasure to be here today at the Arts Council's Creative Industry Summit and to further welcome you to today's exciting panel. I'm Brent Bjorkman, director of the KFP, and I want to take just a moment to share a bit about the evolution of the digital magazine before you learn so much more from our presenters. Over the past 25 years, the Kentucky Folklife Program and our longtime partner, the KAC, we're here with them today, we've been producing what we call a Community Scholars Training Program that's been successful in helping to develop folklore training skills that we use as folklorists, and put these into the hands of so many Kentuckians who have used them to learn how to document their own communities. These community scholars, over 275 graduates over the past 25 years, have gone on to create special interpretive projects in their home areas, highlighting traditional arts, culture, heritage that they have pride in sharing back to their own communities, and sometimes even wider audiences, as you're going to hear more about in a moment. So I now turn the summit program over to Delainey Bowers, the Kentucky Folklife Program's editor-in-chief of our Folklife Digital Magazine, who's going to bring to today's convening two special scholars you heard a moment about introduced, who have contributed articles and will tell you about the latest edition of their evolving work. I'm joined here too with Camille Maria Acosta, who is our Folklife specialist with the KFP. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed. I know you will. Delainey, please take it away.
Good morning, and a big thanks again to all of you for being here today. My name is Delainey Bowers, and for the last 5 years, I have served as editor-in-chief for Kentucky Folklife Digital Magazine. And in this capacity, I get to work closely with contributors throughout the entirety of the publishing process, and I'm always blown away by how seamlessly things come together in the end. For those of you who may be unaware, Kentucky Folklife Digital Magazine is a multimedia digital publication that is dedicated to highlighting folklife or diverse expressive cultures throughout the Commonwealth. And so far, we've been proud to feature written essays, documentaries, and photo essays that cover the tremendous expanse of folkloric traditions, both long-standing and emergent here in Kentucky. So from death doulas and mushroom hunters to old-time musicians and feminist potters, Kentucky Folklife is dedicated to documenting, preserving, and sharing these expressions of cultures that make our home place unique. In the past, the magazine has been funded by grants from the National Endowment for the Arts, with additional support from the Kentucky Arts Council, the Kentucky Folklife Program, and Western Kentucky University. Our most recent issue was published back in October and is centered on the cultural conservation and preservation work that's being done by community scholars in Kentucky, and how that work connects to larger themes of placemaking, identity, and creative praxis. While two of our contributors, Yolantha Harrison-Pace and Brenda S. Bear, are here with us today, the issue also features additional pieces by Octavia Sexton and Doug Naselroad, with an introduction by Bob Gates. So I'll be asking our guests a number of questions about their experiences with researching, writing, and presenting their work. And if our audience has any additional questions, feel free to add them into our chat, which will be monitored by Camille. So to begin, ladies, I'll ask each of you to introduce yourselves. What's your connection to Kentucky, and where are you currently located? Oh, Yolantha, I think you might need to unmute yourself.
Okay.
There we go.
Does that work? Okay. I'm Yolantha Harrison-Pace. I'm in Boyle County, specifically Danville, Kentucky.
And Brenda?
I'm sorry, I was trying to find out how to unmute myself. My name is Brenda Bear, and I live in Lewis County in a small town called Garrison.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, ladies. All right, so our first question sort of has a few parts to it. The main one being, what is your connection to the Community Scholars Program? How did you hear about this program, and who encouraged you to apply?
Well, absolutely. I had never heard of it before. Never. I had no clue what it was about. And I was invited by the wonderful, fabulous Judy Sizemore. I think she's an art angel throughout the state of Kentucky. Anybody who has anything to do with art knows Judy. And for some reason, she's always kept me on her radar and felt that this is something that I might need or I might be able to contribute to the state of Kentucky with.
And I was introduced, Mark Brown had been sending me emails for quite a while, just keeping me updated on things that the Kentucky Arts Association was doing. And I didn't really pay a whole lot of attention there for a while because I was working so much. And then one day I did, and I asked him 5 million questions, which he responded to all of them. And he encouraged me, and it was all uphill from there. It was wonderful from there.
And both Yolantha and Brenda, if you could both answer, if you remember what year you did your Community Scholars Program and where that program was located in the state.
Mine was in Annville, and I think it was 2014 that I was in the wonderful loo of this project.
And mine's easy. I graduated this year in the spring, and I took my training in Hazard, Kentucky.
Great, wonderful. All right, so our next question that we have for you is, when you were first starting out with the Community Scholars Program, maybe you weren't entirely familiar with the curriculum, but what were you hoping to learn from the program?
Since I didn't know what it was, I had no clue. I came in with a blank slate. It was like, okay, now who are these people? What are we doing here? And boy, was I surprised in a pleasant, wonderful way.
And I'm not sure I had any expectations either, but I wanted to challenge myself, and I knew that I wanted to find some like-minded people so that I could give back to doing more art, which I had kind of put off on the side for many years. And what I found was lots of support, direction, and encouragement.
Yeah, and when both of you maybe think back to Judy, who introduced you, Yolantha, and Mark, who introduced you, Brenda, how did they sort of describe the Community Scholars Program? What was it about the program that made you maybe seem interested, or was there a hook that both Judy and Mark sort of were able to lure you in with?
There was no hook. My hook was Judy. I trusted her. And uh, the fact that there was going to be art, and then the fact that scholar intrigued me. To be considered a scholar in something was from my neck of the woods, really was going to be an elevation to anything that I'd be able to put on my resume.
I like that answer. Um, I think just the fact it was the arts, grant opportunities. And one of the biggest reasons I think that kind of hooked me was he told me that there was no one else in Lewis County who'd taken the program. So I took that as a challenge.
Yeah, that makes sense, Brenda. I can see you doing that.
Yes.
All right, so after we both of you had gone through the training, what were some new skills that you learned during your time during the Community Scholars Program?
For me, I was able to expand on the skill of listening. And the listening went from being, I guess, a noun to a verb. And I learned there's a listening that I always did, and that was like, oh, yeah, But with this program, the listening turned into, oh, mm-hmm. And then it went into, aha, and then a way to connect things. And listening then became a calling. Those of you who know that from that spiritual realm, listening became a ministry for me. And listening became the difference between going and hearing a band or an orchestra uh, and being able to figure out, and appreciate and hear the violins, the harp, uh, a banjo, a bass, a clarinet. And then I also learned through the new way of listening that matter doesn't matter if the listening component is not present and engaged. Otherwise, things like Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, Rainbow Lives Matter become just a flash in the pan news story or the latest headlines. And listening is the entree I found to longevity. Listening is the heart of legacy and also the birthplace for peace. And that was one of the most valuable skills that I gleaned from this program is how to listen in a different way, how to listen in a way to make a difference in my life and other lives and in future lives.
I love that answer. One of the biggest skills I gained was learning how to properly document community stories. I learned how to interview people, how to listen with intention, and how to preserve their histories in a respectful, accurate way. I found it was very important to the people that I was talking to make them feel respected and honored. Roger Cooper was one of the first people I interviewed, and he's a local Kentucky master fiddler. And he made a huge impact on me. He was definitely sent to me for a reason because it kind of snowballed from there. We still keep in touch, and I consider him a dear friend. But one of the most important things I learned was how to trust my own voice and my own abilities. It gave me the tools to reconnect with my creativity and the confidence to step forward.
Then it sounds like for both of you ladies, then there's something internal, right, that's happening in going through this program, right? Sort of you have these skills that are practical and you can apply them in the projects that you do, but it sounds like for both of you, it really was an inner journey towards becoming this new woman, right? Or becoming this new individual who does have these skills, but it applies differently to how you move through the world.
Exactly. I wholeheartedly agree. It added a whole new dimension to who I am and or was.
Agreed. Agreed. It changed me in ways that I didn't even know what was in these things were in me. I'd always considered myself an artist, and I even more so now, but I think I even found out that I'm a little bit of a writer on top of being an artist, and lots of inspiration, lot of inspiration, and a lot of just respect for carrying on those traditions from the people that came before us and the people that made such an impact that a lot of us don't even really know about. The Roger Cooper I met earlier, he lived like 5 miles down the road from me, and I didn't even know he was a Kentucky master fiddler. I didn't even know who he was. And it's just amazing the people that I've met along the way and have and continue to inspire me.
And I think that's a perfect segue into our next question that we have then. So, since graduating from Community Scholars, how have you been able to utilize the skills that you've learned? Brenda, you sort of touched on that very briefly, but if either of you want to sort of expand on that, that would be wonderful.
This is the question 6, the digital magazine.
Oh, question 5, I think.
Oh, we're on question 5. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. I refer back to writing stories, which I've kind of started doing since Community Scholars. One of those stories being I'm part of a Military Heroes Banner project here in Lewis County, where I design the banners. And since starting the design of them, I've also started writing stories about certain soldiers when I can find their families or if there's a story to be told. And James Rival Reese is one of those people. And I knew his daughter and didn't really make the connection till later, but she was my English teacher in high school. I don't know if I want to tell how many years ago that was. It was over 20, over 30. But I talked to her for over 2 or 3 hours. It was a wonderful connection. She told me great stories about her father. She wanted it to be known that when I told the story, that it was important to talk about the sacrifice that the families made while these soldiers were serving for so many years. I think her father, if I'm not mistaken, was in the service for like 30 years, maybe. And after I wrote the story and sent it back to her, she actually sent me a message to tell me, again, being my former high school English teacher, to tell me what a great job I did. And she was very proud of me. It was, again, another beautiful experience in my life.
I hope she gave you an A+ on that assignment.
I think she did.
Sounds like it. I do have a really quick question for that. Did you reach out to the newspaper specifically to begin these columns that you share, or what did that process look like?
I did reach out to them. I knew the local one here, and I reached out to the publisher in Maysville, Kentucky, and they were very open to the idea. Actually, I'm still sending them stories. I sent them a story a couple weeks ago about the last Lewis County Civil War soldier, and they always print them. I get messages from people. Sometimes I get messages from the family members. It requires some research, to make sure what I'm reporting on is accurate. And it, it's just been a wonderful experience.
And how many of those banners have you made? Was that the very first one, or have you done ones since then?
317.
Brenda, that's mind blowing. And what
Yes.
will they be posted somewhere, or sort of what's the plan for those?
They just took them down. They hang from April till Veterans Day. So they just took them down, but typically they line the streets of the city of Vanceburg.
Wow, that's so impressive. Congrats on that work. That's really wonderful.
Thank you.
All right, Yolantha, how have you been able to utilize those skills?
Well, I'm going to harp a little bit more on the skill of listening, which has helped me to recognize that folk lifing is a lifestyle, and it has caused me to actually redefine life. And what do people really mean when they are saying, well, that's life, or life just be life and honey? What does that really mean? For example, when someone's going through a divorce, they'll say, like, that's life. If you stub your toe, that's life. If you get a flat tire, that's life. If you have a loss of a job, that's life, honey. If your lover cheats on you, that's life. In my cultural tradition, I was taught that Jesus came that we might have life more abundantly. So then I start looking at, well, if I believe that, then did Jesus come so that we'd have divorces? And not only would I stub my toe, it'd break my toe, would I have flat tires, my radiator would overflow, I'd be unemployed. So in essence, I had to use my new skill to redefine some things. So when projects came up, and I've had myriads of projects, but one of the ones I'm most proud of was being able to be the docent, or better known as the tour guide, at the Bluegrass Community Arts Center. And I was able to tour lots of kids would come through on their field trips. And I think I've done this for 2 years straight. And I was able to actually write my own script. And I was able to sprinkle some of this folk scholar type stuff on the scripts that I was writing so that I could look at Picasso and Cher Monet, Rembrandt, or anything that they had hanging on the walls from a folk life perspective, whether it was Stonehenge and the architecture from the Bronze Age, or if it was the beautiful work of the pyramids. It was an honor to be able to do something like that. Now, just recently as yesterday, I'm serving on this board called Teach Peace here in the Boyle County area. And they're trying to do a beauty pageant to raise funds for kids that have been that are ill or that have been affected by various natural disasters here in Kentucky. And they asked if, as the board member, I would help them get something for their silent auction. I knew, or I just recently met a man who was a wood carver. So I decided I'd ask him. And he decided that he was going to donate for the auction a chess board set that he created. And when I went to pick it up yesterday, it was so beautiful. Next thing I knew, I found myself asking him about it, and it became so interesting to me. Next thing I knew, I had my phone up, and I was unexpectedly capturing a valuable piece of Kentucky life. So it's like your radar is on all the time, listening, watching. When I go to vendings, every booth has a story worth telling of who, what, where, why, and when they're doing what they're doing, how they came about to do it. So it's like have been turned inside out or opened or blossomed or something. So it's just so much other things through grief counseling, trying to find out, well, how you got where you got. Domestic violence counseling. Okay, so what happened? How did it happen? Tell me your life story. How can we make your life better by your ability to share or have a voice into what's been going on with you? So it's just endless, endless, the things that you can get involved with.
Absolutely. And it sounds like both of you then have, it's like a direct impact on the communities where you reside, right? So you don't, it's sort of just proof that you don't have to do this sort of international travel to find these aspects, right? They're right at home in your own communities. All right, our next question that we have then, sort of moving from the community scholars background that you both have to now that you are both contributors for our current issue of the Kentucky Folklife Digital Magazine. What did you choose to create for the digital magazine and why? Brenda, I'll have you go first, please.
Okay, I chose to share the story of a community mural project that I created. I knew I wanted to, through this program, I knew I wanted to honor local artists through my art. And it was Mark, Delainey, Camille, Brett, and Judy who encouraged me to express that idea through a mural. And Mark also encouraged me to apply for a apprenticeship grant, which meant I was going to apprentice someone local because I have experience in doing murals. So creating the murals, um, it was just, I worked with a couple ladies, Susie Pick and Gala Brown. Um, Again, reconnecting with people my age. We learned, we supported each other. We built a bond that carried us through every challenge and brushstroke. Sharing this project in the digital magazine felt like the clearest expression of what the program allowed me to rediscover, that art can be a bridge between people, stories, and generations. We did, as you can see in the picture, we did document 6 local people. We had the Kentucky Master Fiddler. We had 2 folk art musicians, folk artists and musicians, which were the Kenny brothers. We had Bobby Mackey, which is a country music singer, of course. Mitchell Toll, who is a very famous watercolor artist, and Faith Isham, who was a soprano musician. And 3 of those artists were able to attend our mural dedication in May. It's a project that we worked on for almost a year, and something I am very proud of. It's hanging in the entrance to downtown Vanceburg, and we made the dedication part of our festival that we had every year in May. And again, another result of taking this class that I'm extremely proud of.
And Brenda, what has the reception been like towards this mural?
Lots of wonderful comments. Um, just hearing from people like Mitchell Toll and Bobby Mackey telling us what an honor it was to be considered and to be remembered. I still talk to them from time to time. The family members of the Kenny brothers were also very humbled by it. And I'm hoping that one day it can even be added to on at some point, that we could do more or do more murals. In my head, it's my anything that involves art or painting or just telling these stories, I'm all in.
Mhm.
I love that attitude. Being all in towards something shows your, yeah, your dedication, your deep connection to it. All right, Yolantha, what was the piece that you created for our digital magazine, and why did you choose to create it?
Well, I'm going to also probably combine a little bit of what was my approach. Um, to be honest with you, I almost did not do the project because I was in such an emotional state of grief that because I'd lost my husband, I'd lost my mother within 3 months of that, and her brother died 5 minutes before her. And then a lot of my mentors passed away. But there was something about this opportunity that helped me step out of death, be deathing, into true life, be lifing. Um, any basic interview begins with the 5 W's: who, what, where, why, when. So my approach to this project became, well, who am I now? What am I now? Where am I? Why am I? When am I? And if I couldn't answer those questions for me, how was I going to be able to answer it for other folks that I came in contact with for any kind of projects dealing with the scholar program? So for this project, I had to revisit my first few months here in Kentucky, where folks told me explicitly, you ain't from here, you're never going to be from here. So out of respect for my story and who I was, I learned to have a respect for other stories and who other people were. And so this approach, my approach, became one of gratitude, trust, and vulnerability. Because as a scholar, that's what you're asking of other people. Trust me and be vulnerable with me. So I started digging in my archives of poems and identity things and things that I've written since I've been here in Kentucky that had to deal with my impression of Kentucky, like the first time I ever saw mountains. And then sharing that with people who lived in the mountains all their life and finding how my fresh approach and then their everyday approach intersected. So I wanted to bring somewhat of an introspective of what it was for me to become a Kentuckian, if I am one.
Absolutely. And in the chat, Camille has provided links to both Brenda and Yolantha's pieces if you are curious about checking those out, and I hope you will. They're both two totally different styles of presentation of the type of work that they've done. Each have their strengths, right? And as a reflection of the women who wrote them. So I highly encourage you to check those out. All right, we'll move on to our next question then, sort of still related to this one. But that question is, oh, you know what? I'll just go ahead and ask it right here. Sort of describe your approach to the research, writing, and creating process. We'll just stick with you, Yolantha, since it was sort of that thread that you were sort of following. If you want to expound on that. Your approach to research, writing, and creating. What does that look like for you?
Sometimes it looks like a blank page. Sometimes it looks like just going out amongst the people. Sometimes it looks like going and seeing artwork or going and listening to a concert or a dulcimer, or isn't the red bird the bird of Kentucky? Observing what's around me, and then writing, and then seeing if it resonates with anybody else. I wanted so much to belong because I learned through all my travels in life that home is where the heart is. And my heart was here. And I wanted so much for other people to accept me here. So it meant I had to get out and check. If I couldn't look the part, I wanted to be able to at least talk the part. I wanted to be able to poem the part. because as a writer and poet and essayist, I just approached it from a very artistic perspective.
And do you feel, Yolantha, like the pieces that you selected do a good job at representing what you were trying to say?
I feel they did. Now, there's only half of that. What I think versus other people who then listen to it. When I do identity poems, is there a universal thread that any woman in Kentucky, Mississippi, Africa, Haiti, India, can they relate to it? So that expands how big or small home is. And here is, you ain't from here, you're never going to be here. Well, where is here? What does it take for me to be a part of here? How long do I have to till? How long do I have to, how big does my garden have to be? How many horses do I have to ride before I'm a Kentuckian? How much bourbon do I have to drink before you accept me as being a Kentuckian?
All right. And Brenda, in a similar thread, right? As a Kentucky woman, right? Sort of taking away from that too, and following again that same narrative thread. What was your approach to the piece that you created when you had to research, write, and create that final essay?
Well, I learned that you don't have to be a professional researcher to make a meaningful contribution. You just need genuine curiosity and respect from the people that you're learning from. And I also remember you and Camille shared a lot of online resources during the classes. And, you know, again, like writing the soldier stories, using those resources to make sure my information was correct. But, and then also we learned from, during the class, we learned from several other community scholars that were brought into the class on how they did their research. So just trying to be as accurate as possible and as genuine, and just to make sure that what you're expressing or what you're writing is not just a repeat of what somebody did before you, but it's actually part of you. You're expressing your own views, and you're putting a part of yourself in that.
Oh, I love that. Of course. Yeah. Brenda Esper was just all over that final piece. So proud of the work that both of you have done in that regard. So here we are. We've made it to our final question. Maybe you can do a little sigh of relief as we begin to wrap up this interview. But if you could offer a piece of advice to those who may be curious about participating in the Community Scholars Program or submitting to Kentucky Folklife, what would it be? Ideally, I would like to have both of you answer both of these questions too, right? A piece of advice for folks who would like to do the program, as well as folks who might submit something, a proposal to the digital magazine.
Well, although this is the last question, it doesn't give me a sigh of relief. I had to bring out my stress toy for this question, because to me, this is the most controversial for me to answer. Because every time that our government reframes, omits, shuts down, tears down the wing of a building, unhangs a president's picture or work of art, scrubs the history of the people, whitewashes or blackwashes their culture, their inventions, their contributions to our land, just because it doesn't fit their narrative or the narrative of what America is or isn't. It sucks the life and vitality from the basic foundational existence of the real nitty gritty of who, what, where, why, and when of my America. The Community Scholars Program, and you're submitting a piece to the Kentucky Folklife Magazine, helps to guarantee that we are, and were here. You know, we talk about power to the people. Well, you have more power than one vote or a one-time march. You have the power and legacy of your voice and the folks' voices that you represent. So my advice is take advantage of this opportunity.
And said in a way that only Yolantha Harrison Pace could say it. Yes, thank you. Take advantage very much so of this opportunity. Wonderful. And Brenda, what advice would you offer?
What a beautiful speaker you are, Yolantha. Really, you are very inspiring. My biggest piece of advice is don't underestimate the value of your story or your perspective. The Community Scholars Program is built on the idea that everyday experiences and traditions are meaningful. And if you're curious, jump in. You don't have to be an expert. You just need to be open, willing to learn, and ready to share what matters to you in your community and to trust that your work has value. And that is something I definitely learned during this time. And I'm still learning, but I feel like the Community Scholars Program put me on that path. And I don't plan to get off anytime soon.
Brenda, you can't. Once it's in your blood, you can't get off of it.
Yeah, it's a
It's
beautiful
something
thing.
ingrained. It's ingrained.
All right. The one question as a folklorist, right, that has been ingrained in my head to ask at the end of each interview is there something that we didn't get to cover that you wish we did, or just sort of final thoughts on anything that we had to share today?
Gratitude. Thank you. I think probably Brenda and I both have lived a lot of life. So there's no way we could put it all in one article. So I think everything for me got in that needed to be in for this particular event. And my thought process is to be continued.
I love that. I made myself a note and just said, but the behind the scenes details, when we spent almost a year in this old historic home in downtown Vanceburg, and it was when the girls and I felt that the color was off and we had to repaint over top of it, or the mayor stopping in with to encourage us and tell us what a good job we were doing, or just the community people would pop in the door from time to time and just tell us how proud they were that we were taking on this project. So those are things that I didn't put in the article that still resonate with me.
Perfect. Perfect answers from perfect women. I love it. All right, so I'm just gonna check really quickly if any of you have any questions for Yolantha or Brenda, and you would like to post those in the chat now. We could answer those. Give that maybe a minute or two, and if not, that's totally fine. Once again, I will encourage everyone to visit the Folklife Digital Magazine. It's kyfolklifemag.org. This was our 9th issue, celebrating 5 years this year, so 9 issues altogether. Again, just sort of a treasure trove of different pieces that we have, and I'm very proud. Of course, I'm biased in that way, but I think it's always worth the read. Always worth it to take some time and see what folks across the state have learned and are willing to share with us.
I have a question in the meantime, when people are dropping questions. Yolantha and Brenda, thank you so much. Such great, insightful answers. Again, you both speak so beautifully about your work, and it shows. And I was just curious, we started to touch on this a little bit at the end of this panel, but do you have any advice for artists, folklorists, right, cultural ethnographers, people that care so much about the world, that either have imposter syndrome, like might be really afraid to go forth and do these artistic venues or journeys or what have you. You know, when their biggest, I guess, opponent or obstacle is themselves. I don't know if you all have ever dealt with that, but do you have any advice for people that want to do these things but might just be afraid?
Well, really, for me, the more you know, the more you know. And how else will you grow outside of being an imposter or, well, I don't feel qualified? My father told us when we were young that you become an expert the minute you go 5 miles outside of your home. And so I'm an expert about that. And I can learn to be an expert by asking questions, by watching, by listening, by touching, by tasting other people's stuff. So I can't talk about chitlins until I've had chitlins. I can't talk about a pancake and a waffle or a scone or caviar until I've had it. Once I've actually had caviar, yay or nay, yuck or whatever, I become an expert. I'm no longer an imposter talking about caviar. Experience life. That'll help.
And I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned as an older woman, and it's going to kind of contradict a little bit, I guess, of what I've said previously, but I think my art started becoming more expressive and more me when I stopped worrying so much about receiving other people's approval. It was just important to me to express what I had to say. And I think it's made me a much better artist because I've stopped worrying so much about that, because I feel like I did have something to say, and I just do the best job I can and then go from there.
And see, also, if your why is very clear, why am I doing this? That'll override any other questions that come through. Also, know that unless you tell your story, somebody else is going to tell it. Then you're going to end up with Thanksgiving. End up with cowboys and Indians and John Wayne. And I love John Wayne. However, that's what you're going to end up with if you don't step out and tell your story from your own voice.
That's great. That both of those answers are so telling, and I think it makes complete sense to try things, go for it, right? Like go get out of your comfort zone, but also trust yourself, right? And know that you're the only person that's living this life and that enjoys the art just as much. It's you, right? Do it for yourself.
Think about it. As a baby, do they not start walking because of, well, this is imposter syndrome. I don't know where we get that, who teaches or puts that in us, because you would have never walked, you would have never skipped, hopped, jumped if you were so worried about, well, I'm not really a runner. Just run, baby, run.
That's perfect.
And I think that's might be the biggest takeaway today, Yolantha, is just run, baby, run, right? If there's one thing that folks need to take away from our Creative Industry Summit series, it's that. All right. Well, I again wanted to thank both of you for taking the time to share your insights with us today. It's been such a blast getting to hear just both of your experiences and how you choose to move through the world, and the way that you phrase things or word things, or just that you get to share it with us. I was really very thankful for that entire
Thank
process.
you. Thank you so much.
Yes, grateful for all of you.
Of course. All right, Chris Cathers, I think I might toss it back over to you for any final thoughts.
Again, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. As Delainey said, we greatly appreciate the opportunity to hear from each of you and get your perspectives and learn a little bit more about your process. We find that these Summit Series webinars give us a lot to think about. Gives us an opportunity to hear it from the voice of the artist and the creative, and learn about the process and about the work involved. So again, we thank you, Yolantha and Brenda, both for sharing this insight. Delainey, thank you for moderating this and for telling these stories in the Kentucky Digital Folklore Magazine. But we greatly appreciate it. And I know that the Folklife Magazine links have been put here. Thank you, Camille, for posting those. And so there's more information if you would like to read more in depth about each of these stories. And there were a couple that Delainey had mentioned earlier that in addition to both Brenda and Yolantha's, that there are others. Please take an opportunity to read those. Brent, we thank you for joining us as well, and appreciate your time in this effort, and then Mark for pulling all this together. But say that to also say, hope you have a wonderful holiday season. The seasons are upon us. Get out and buy local art. Go out and enjoy a performance and give tickets as gifts for others. And I also want to invite you and those that are listening that on Monday, November the 24th, we will be holding our Governor's Awards in the Arts at the Berry Hill Mansion in Frankfort. That will be at 10 a.m. and we will bestow the highest art accolades that we can on 6 individuals and organizations in the Commonwealth. So again, thank you very much for joining us today. And with that, we will sign off. So thank you, everyone.